let's call Dr. Anaga now. Before I speak up for the last thing, Dr. Anaga, are you ready with the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So you will give us an idea about all the kinds of IOLs to be used.
Yeah.
And recently there's a surge in interest on iris fixated IOLs. So lot of people feel that probably all the glued IOLs are creating a port from the inside to the outside, and infection can travel in. And an iris claw is very simple, less time consuming, very good results. So where do we stand today with the type of IOLs to be used in such a situation where there is no posterior capsular support?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanjay. Am I audible?
Yeah, very well.
Yeah. And is my slide visible, sir?
Not as yet. I don't think you have shared your screen as yet.
No, sir. I have. Just a minute.
Then you have to share your screen and
1
click
minute, sir.
done. Yeah. Now we have your slides.
Yes, sir. Now is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Sanjay, for inviting me to your IC, and I would be speaking to you all on no capsular support. What are my options? No financial interest in any of the products seen here. So what would be the basic indication? So basically, when you have a condition where there is a large PC rupture and there is no support of either the posterior or many times even the anterior capsule, with or without iris support, it could either be a PC rent which has occurred intraoperatively, or it could be a severely subluxated or dislocated lens, or a patient has come to you operated elsewhere with a severe subluxation or dislocated IOL for an IOL exchange. So these are the various situations where we need to see. So now what are the options that we have? You have retrofixated iris claw PC IOLs, scleral fixated IOLs, glued IOLs using either the Yamane technique or the glue technique, iris sutured IOLs or the AC IOLs. Now let us see how we can use these options in various situations. Now you have first an aphakia with an open posterior capsule here. If there is a 360-degree intact anterior capsule, you can use a sulcus placed 3-piece IOL with an optic capture. If there is an anterior capsular rim which is present, if it is present, then use a 3-piece IOL again. But here there is a risk of iris chafing with inflammation. If iris fixation, there is again the risk of CME with pigment dispersion. In ACIOLs, definitely now the incidence of use is very less. There's greater incidence of corneal edema and glaucoma because the angle gets fired. And of course, the scleral fixation, where you have again the options of the glued, Yamane, sutured, or and the sutured IOLs. Now suppose you need to use these IOLs. Let us see now if you have an intact anterior capsule and see whether there is the posterior capsular end is very small and you can put an in the bag implantation, you can still go ahead and do an in the bag implantation. However, if the PCR is very large and that could be risky, so you go ahead with a 3-piece in the sulcus. However, if the anterior capsule is not intact, but you have sufficient iris tissue, then you can put a retrofixated iris claw IOL. If there is no sufficient iris tissue, you can think of doing a pupilloplasty if the iris tissue can be repaired. If not, then go in for a scleral fixated IOL. But in any of these options, what is the most important thing is a thorough anterior vitrectomy has to be done. And like Dr. Rohit just explained in the previous talk, a pars plana anterior vitrectomy has to be done, and that would help to free all the cortical or the nuclear material, as well as will facilitate a proper insertion and implantation of the IOL. Now let's begin with the SFIOL first. So the basic plan here is that you're using a 10-0 a suture from one side and it's put through the sclera and with a 27 gauge hollow needle from the other side. So you're basically railroading it 180 degrees apart, and then this suture is then pulled out and the two ends are cut and the two ends are tied to the haptic of the SFIOL, and then the IOL is then placed in the posterior chamber. Now this is a 2-point fixation. We also have a 4-point fixation, the advantage of which is there is greater stability of the IOL instead of just a 2-point fixation. Now, this is a video of that. So you basically mark the 2 points exactly 180 degrees apart. You have a conjunctival peritomy because you need to have or expose the sclera, a very light cautery, exactly mark the area of the flap, do partial thickness scleral flaps, maybe 2.5 to 2.5 mm on either side. Once the two flaps are done, all this is done before you actually enter into the AC so that the flaps are done well. And then you make a limbal groove and a tunnel like this, put in a 3-port vitrectomy, and then open up the incision. And now you're putting in the 10-0 Prolene on one side and the needle on the other side, and then railroading it from one end to the other end. Once that is done, in the 4-point fixation, you do it once more with the 10-0 Prolene on one side and the 27 gauge needle on the other side. And then now you bring out both the sutures from the main incision like this. Here there is already no capsule, as you can see here. Now you're cutting the edge here, and now you're taking the SFIOL and tying up the suture at the two openings in the IOL, and then putting in the IOL. And now you will be actually turning the lens so that you have both the haptics perfectly at the 180-degree position in both the places. Now bringing out the loops of the suture, you will be tying it on both the sides. Now, once the sutures are tied on both the sides, underneath the scleral flap, like this, on one side, it's very important to center the lens because sometimes the lens can get pulled towards one side. So it's best to tighten the final knot only later on after both have been, the knots have been tied. And then the main incision is then sutured up. The two scleral flaps also can be sutured up. And then the vitrectomy, the third port is removed, and the vitrectomy port is also sutured up. So this is basically a surgery which involves a lot of time. There could be a lot of anterior chamber fluctuation, difficulty handling the sutures. The lens could be unstable during the implantation. There could be iris distortion and bleeding during the surgery itself. Also, there could be problems related to the Prolene suture, like foreign body sensation, or there could be erosion or loosening of the suture. It could act as a nidus for endophthalmitis, so it's always better to bury it under the scleral flaps. There could be a host of other complications, including intraocular hemorrhages, corneal decompensation because of excessive manipulation, glaucoma, chronic iridocyclitis, uveitis, CME, endophthalmitis, or retinal detachments. Most importantly, because of the instability in the lens, there could be in IOL tilt and decentration, and especially with a 2-point fixation, and there could be pupillary distortion also. Now, this, for example, was a patient with a left eye subluxated IOL, so we planned a vitrectomy with an IOL exchange. So here we are using the glute technique. Again, a peritomy is done on both the sides so as to facilitate partial and then exact measuring, and then exact 180 degrees apart is what has to be done so as to have perfect centration of the lens without any tilt. These are the partial thickness scleral flaps being fashioned out with the blade, and then you're making the main incision with a tunnel. The intraocular lens which has got subluxated is then with the bag complex also is gently brought into the anterior chamber in front of the iris, and then very, very gently it is then maneuvered out of the eye. We have to remember that here a perfect thorough vitrectomy has to be done because otherwise it can cause a lot of vitreous traction in the eye. So here vitrectomy is being done here, and you can see that a small PBI is surgical iridectomy is also being done, and now we are injecting the 3-piece IOL through the main incision, and with a 25 gauge forceps holding the tip of the haptic and then bringing it out through the sclerotomy underneath the scleral flap. Now this tip of the haptic is then held by assistant, and with the handshake technique, again, the other haptic is also pulled out with the 25 gauge forceps, and then we'll be making a small like this. And with the handshake technique, then there would be a 26 gauge needle, which is then a track is made parallel to the sclerotomy site. And then the two haptics on either side are tucked into it and arranged in such a way that there is a perfect IOL centration. The main incision is then sutured up, and then glue is applied underneath the scleral flaps and underneath the conjunctival flaps also, so as to have a very good visual outcome post-op. So you can also use the Yamane technique, where you use a needle 2 millimeters away from the limbus and then 2 millimeters above and below it on either side. So this is the flanged technique, which is now picking up and becoming more popular here. So in this technique, we use either a 30 or a 27 gauge needle and externalize the haptics through the lumen of the needle. And with the 25 gauge forceps, you actually feed in the tip of the haptic into the lumen of the needle, and with a very low, and then once both are brought it, they are both externalized, and then with very low temperature cautery, you create a flange of the terminal 1 to 2 millimeters of the haptic, and then push it underneath the conjunctiva into the scleral wall. So this was a patient where the 3-piece IOL is first put into through the main incision, and then the 27 gauge needle is then inserted 2 millimeters away from the limbus, and then it is fed into the lumen of the 27 gauge needle, and then the flanges are created, and then it is pushed into the scleral wall. Now you have the retrofixated posterior chamber iris claw lens. Now this was a video of a patient who had a dense black cataract. Now, this was a cataract which was having severe symptomasis and okay. With huge subluxation. So here doing a phaco in such a patient would really be truly heroic. So here we tried, this was a very old video actually. So we did ICCE with a cryo, which we thought would be the best technique here, because phaco in such a case would cause a lot of corneal damage and decompensation. So here we have removed the dense black cataract. As you can see here, there's a large incision, and then once there's no vitreous at all, but still, just to be on the safer side, we are doing a vitrectomy just to clear the anterior chamber, and then we have put in iris claw lens. Now remember, whenever we are using an iris claw lens, first outside the eye, check that the two clips of the claw can be opened up with a blunt, thin forceps or an instrument. So once you have done this, maintain the anterior chamber with good viscoelastic, and then on either side, exactly 180 degrees apart, use a blunt, thin instrument to tuck in and enclave the iris in the periphery. Sometimes you can have a cat's eye pupil here, so then you have to be very careful, because this has to be done in the periphery of the lens. Here a PBI is also done, and then you suture up the incision, and this was the end of the case, and then patient did well. Now there are a lot of studies which compare the SFIOL with glued IOLs, and it has been found here in this study, which showed that the postoperative IOL tilt was 25% in glued and 70% in an SFIOL. Again, decentration was 25% in glued and 47% in an SFIOL patient. Now, postoperative inflammation also was found to be significantly more in an SFIOL patient. Again, complications like CME, hyphema, and others were more in an SFIOL patient. This was another study which compared glued IOL with an SFIOL, and here they found that the both the techniques were safe and effective, and they were comparable. Now, this was another study which compared the flanged intrascleral fixation with the iris claw, and they found that it was comparable. Another study which compared the retropupillary fixated iris claw with sulcus placed, and then they found it was comparable. Here, you can see that here there was a group A, which is SFIOL, and group B, which is iris claw. You can see that the postoperative endothelial count was slightly higher in that with the iris claw. Here they showed the duration of surgery is much higher in case of SFIOL compared to the iris claw, which is a faster technique, and probably that is also the reason why there could be better visual outcomes at the end of 6 weeks, which was shown in this in iris claw. So if you compare the pros and cons of both the techniques, in case of the SFIOL, probably It is not dependent on the presence of iris tissue and lesser distortion of pupil, whereas the disadvantage is it's technically demanding, may need a larger incision and has probably higher complication rate. With the retrofixated iris claw, there is lesser damage. It's a faster surgery, more physiological position, and lesser incidence of pseudophacodenesis. Now, today we also have the newer innovative design of the CMT T Flex IOL, which as you can see here, has T-shaped IOL haptics. You can use a 23 gauge forceps, and again at the two ends at 180 degrees apart, underneath a partial thickness scleral flap, you can use these techniques. So to conclude, in all these cases where you have a no capsular support and with or without iris support, you need to choose your option of whether you use a SFIOL or a glued IOL or a retrofixated iris fixated lens. Beware of the complications, do a good pre-operative evaluation, plan A, plan B, everything has to be in place, and have a good post-op monitoring for management of intraocular pressure and inflammation. Thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Okay, right. Okay, I'll just get back to you. Yeah, hi, Dr. Naga. So that was a wonderful presentation. Now, what is the comparative incidence of CMEs in iris claw lenses? Because the iris is moving, the lens is moving, then even if it is retrofixated, still the IOL is moving.
Yes.
So does it cause more problems on the retina?
Yes. This studies show that there was almost a 25% chance, I think, of CME also. So all these patients, I think, more importantly, it's like as you said, it is the movement of the lens as well as iris pigment, which may be, there is irritation and iris pigment release. And also if the vitrectomy has not been done properly, if there is a vitreoretinal traction which is still there, patient comes back with recurrent iridocyclitis, and then the chances of CME become really higher. So a proper evaluation and post-operatively monitoring, explaining the prognosis to the patient and early detection of the CME is really very important. So the patient has to be monitored very closely.
So when it is retrofixated, what about the endothelium with an iris? Do you think there is an impact on the endothelium on that movement of the IOL with the iris? In a retrofixated, not the front one.
Yeah, on the corneal endothelium, you mean?
Yeah, on the corneal endothelium.
Yes. So on the corneal endothelium, it may or may not.
With all due respect, sorry, doctors, to interrupt. We have hardly last 8 minutes to go. So if we have a next speaker, then we can move on.
So then I'll skip my talk because I think we are running short of time.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we'll do this discussion and then we'll call it a night.
Sure. Take your time. Thank you so much.
Right. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Naga, sorry.
Yes. So when we are placing a retrofixated iris claw, finally we'll be doing it through the anterior chamber, and then the anterior chamber has to be really very stable and maintained throughout. Many times what happens is there could be fluctuations because there is a larger incision, and because of these fluctuations, there is more likelihood of damage to the corneal endothelium. So in such cases, definitely a dispersive viscoelastic to protect the corneal endothelium is extremely important. And even post-operatively, once the lens is stable, removal of the viscoelastic and then monitoring in the post-operative period. Also looking out for intraocular pressure rise. So I would also strongly suggest and recommend a small PBI also to be done surgically, so that there is no problem of a pupillary clog glaucoma or an inflammatory rise in the IOP post-operatively.
Well, there's also incidences of the iris getting necrosed at the point of claw, and one of the claw dislocating from the iris.
Yes.
So lots of people feel that probably placing the lens over the iris is an easier and a safer bet because everything is visible. And because the claws are at the side and not at the top, so the effect on endothelium is also less. But they are all still under discussion.
So basically here, the main crux is when you're actually putting in the iris tissue, enclaving it into the two clips or the claws of the iris claw. you have to see that dimple and then be sure that the lens is stable. If you're not really sure, then that becomes a real problem, and it can give rise to loosening and then iris atrophic patches also coming in there. So that dimple has to be seen. Before that, you should not go on to the other side also. Sometimes it has been seen that the two clips may be fused and there is really no place in between. So before you actually put it into the eye, you have to confirm it on both the sides and only then put it inside the eye.
So what do you enclave it with? A 30 gauge needle or a very thin solid needle?
Thin solid instruments are. I have not used a needle because the tip is sharp and it can actually damage the iris also.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
works very well.
And what about the Yamane technique? Some people feel that you have made an entry from the inside of the eye to the outside subconjunctival. So in case of a conjunctivitis or something, maybe the infection has a track to move into the eye. Is this fear true?
I don't think so, because here you are putting it through the conjunctiva into the scleral wall. So actually it is not really exposed outside the conjunctiva. It is beneath the conjunctiva. So I don't think that should be a cause. And it is a very, very thin cut that has been made through the needle. So it's a very sharp opening which closes easily. So I don't think that should act as an IDUS for infection.
So which in your opinion is the best way to fix an IOL in a PCR?
I feel, considering the experience of the surgeon, each person may have his own technique and may be proficient in any specific technique. However, in my hands, I have used the retrofixated iris claw, and I feel that is the easiest technique, because being an anterior segment surgeon, not using a pars plana approach may become more better for me and for other anterior segment surgeons, and it is a faster technique. And once you master the art of enclaving the iris through the claw, then it becomes very, very quick. As regards SFIOL, I think with the innovative technique of the CMT flex, where there is no need of suturing, there's no need of an problem like putting a needle through like a Yamane technique, then I think maybe that makes life much more easier for a scleral fixated kind of.
Where do you procure the lenses from?
That I think, sir, is available with Nishant or somebody. I'll just find out the number and then share it with you. But that is now available. But depends. We'll have to look for the sizes that are available now, because in a large eye, for example, you have to look at the limbus to limbus size and then order the lens.
Right.